The first sound he hears in the cemetery is a sound he thought he'd forgotten, a child trying not to sob. It's the way the breath snags in small ribs, the way grief makes itself almost polite. The noise makes him turn his head, even though he doesn't want to. Even though he came here today to stand alone before a stone with her name in it and apologize to a woman who can't anywhere hear him anymore. Adrian Vale sees them on the low slope where the winter grass does nothing to hide the earth's soft scars. Two girls. One is taller, slim, with a braid like a rope thrown over her shoulder. The other is shorter, her hair a tumble under a wool hat too big for her face. They kneel so close to the headstone that their coats will be pocked with mud when they stand. Someone has left a bundle of daisies, the white petals bruised with the cold. The taller girl is squeezing the ribbon around the stems, untying, tying, untying it with the anxious insistence of someone in a storm. They are facing away from him, but even at a distance, the older one's jawline punches him like memory. It is a half moon he has seen in the bathroom mirror while he shaved at 22, 28, 39. It is a line he traced with his finger in college, amazed that bone and flesh could be so precise. When the breeze lifts a veil of hair from the taller girl's neck, he sees the tender notch behind her ear. He had once kissed that place on a different person and felt a hum travel his own spine. He hazards a step closer, and the name on the stone lances his eyes. Mara Lynn, 1982-2024, his ex-wife, the only person who'd ever demanded the truth from him without apology. The younger girl wraps her arms around the stone. "Mama," she says softly, like a secret no one else is allowed to know. "We brought daisies. I picked the prettiest ones, see? We got more in the car," the older girl says, trying to sound practical and grown and failing to steady her voice. Her breath shears. "We'll come back next Sunday, promise." The younger girl nods hard and kisses the cold granite. "Okay." For a moment, all the air leaves his lungs in a hollowness, so total he thinks this is how the inside of a grave must feel. He has not called her by her name out loud in years. Mara, because saying it opened doorways that never closed. He had convinced himself to read the obituary alone, to get in his car and drive to the cemetery alone, to stand like a man alone. He had not imagined this, the small, private shapes of the lives she made without him echoing in the cool of a Sunday morning. A woman in a rust-colored coat stands near a bank of bare hydrangeas, keeping a watchful, protective eye. When she glances up, she notices him. Her face shifts through recognition into something else, and then hardens like cooling glass. She takes a step toward the girls, as if she wants to gather them and leave before the world makes a demand. Adrian doesn't move. His legs feel full of needles. He recognizes the woman then, not by name at first, but by the way she had stood behind Mara at dinners, steady as kitchen tile. Bakery owner, he thinks. Friend? Willa? Yes, Willa Shore. The woman who once sent him home with a loaf of warm bread in the shape of a turtle shell because he'd been too stiff when Mara cried in her shop. Willa sees him seeing the girls, and her mouth thins. She starts toward him with a tight, careful stride, as if the earth is unreliable underfoot. The older girl lifts her head, their eyes meet across the stones. Her eyes are a gray-green he knows too well. He once called that color kaleidoscope. In their depths now is something he recognizes with nausea, calculation. Threat assessment. What are you? Who are you to my pain? Adrian, Willa says to him when she's close enough, making it both a greeting and an accusation. Now is not. The older girl's gaze keeps snagging on his face. The younger girl draws in a quick breath as if some interior gust has tipped a window. Willa steps between him and them. "Go to the car," she tells the girls. "Eliza, June, please." So, not Ivy or Lily. June. Eliza. Names like soft rain on the summer of his bones. "Who is he?" June asks, chin jutting in that defiant angle he recognizes from a 15-year-old boy who once punched a neighbor kid for laughing when his mother slipped, and from a woman in a courtroom who looked at him like he'd already died. "It's okay," Willa says. "Go to the car, I'll be right there." "I know him," Eliza says in a voice like the thin edge of a bell. She blinks at him. "From a picture." June's eyes sharpen. "What picture?" "The little box in Mama's desk," Eliza says, still solemn, still soft. "With the ribbons. The one with the key that she lost, and then you found with a magnet. He had the gray tie and his eyes looked like the ocean when it's about to snow." Adrian can't swallow. He doesn't have saliva enough. That tie was the one he wore to Noah Reynolds' IPO party on the night he missed the appointment with Mara that would become the appointment she never trusted him to keep ever again. He remembers the white of the shirt, the way the knot felt too tight. He remembers taking the tie off in the car, throwing it in the back seat like a small, angry snake. He remembers thinking at the time he would remember none of it. Willa's hand moves, small and necessary, to the girl's shoulders, guiding them, and something visceral stirs in him, something like a rope thrown down into a well. "Willa," he says. His voice sounds low, like he borrowed it. "Can I?" "No," she says. "Not now, not like this." He nods, he doesn't blame her, but the old habit of control crawls up his throat. He looks at the stone again because there is no other anchor. The daisies lean in the wind like small heads in prayer. "I didn't know she," he doesn't have the word. "That she left. Two of them," Willa supplies, tired. He looks back at the girls. June's eyes are full of a blistering intelligence. Eliza's small mouth is pressed in concentration, as if she is trying not to forget. The shock under his skin turns its face and opens its eyes. The world tilts. He had sat across from Mara in a clinic room 10 years ago while a doctor with careful hair explained percentages, and they signed forms, and they named a hope with their pens. He remembers the fluorescent light, the smell of antiseptic, the way Mara's fingers were cold in his. And after he slept at the office for 6 weeks, after he forgot to come home one too many times, after a late-night confession with a person whose perfume smelled like fake green apples, a divorce lawyer's office where forms ate their marriage whole. He remembers a clause he skimmed, the embryos. He speaks to Willa's coat collar because he cannot bring his eyes to her face. "Are they yours?" She says it not gently, but without weapon. "You should go to the car when I tell you to. They put your picture in that box because Mara refused to hate you where they could see. She kept some things to herself. She had to." He hears the answer in that, then it's as if the earth slides under him. He reaches for the back of a granite angel to keep from landing in the wet. Willa softens. "There's a letter," she says, "from her to you. An envelope I was supposed to give you if I ever saw you again outside a bakery and not in a courtroom. I didn't think the day would look like this. But here we are." "Here we are," he says, because his mouth is on automatic. "You'll read it." Willa's asking him to hold something heavier than paper. "I'll read whatever she left me," he says. "She left them," Willa says, eyes running to the retreating small backs of the girls. "Not to me, to the world, but you're part of it whether you understand that yet or not." He closes his eyes for a second because the shape of the last 10 years is pressing their seams. The last time he saw Mara, alive and furious, she stood at the edge of his office and looked at his glass desk and the chalky view and the ragged lines under his eyes, and she said, "You never show up for anything that bleeds." Now he is here because what bleeds is everything. He nods and steps back as if from a cliff edge. The older girl doesn't move. She is fierce rootedness. "What's your name?" Eliza asks him. The curiosity in her voice is not hungry, just attentive. "Adrian," he says. He swallows. "I'm Adrian." "It's just a name," June says and shields her sister with that small, hard angle. "We're going." He doesn't argue. Willa steers them up the slope, away from him, the little hats bobbing. June does not look back. Eliza does once and lifts a mitten in a cautious wave, then puts it down. He stands until the car's tail lights are crumbs of red in the winter gray, and the only living thing left on this patch of ground is a white dog in the distance chasing contrails. The daisies on the grave nod. The stone has nothing to give back but the courtesy of being unmoving. Adrian sticks his hands in his coat pockets to keep them from shaking. Later today, back in the city, the chauffeur will open the car door at his building as if the leather interior could quiet the shape of this morning. His assistant will quietly adjust his schedule, erasing the afternoon's meetings with the kind of speed that indicates a well-practiced eraser. His girlfriend will text, "Where'd you go?" with a little thundercloud emoji that indicates she thinks she knows him. His mother will not call. And somewhere, two girls will be buckling back into their lives, reminding themselves not to wait for something that is already gone. He stays until his cheeks numb. He thinks he should say something to the stone, maybe forgiveness, maybe sorry. He hears himself whisper, "Mara," like the intersection where it always rained. He says, "I'm here." as if she had ever asked him to be. Then he leaves because the children are gone and being here now feels like showing up to a fire line after all the water is out. In the parking lot, his phone pings. His assistant's message is small and necessary. A woman named Nadine Carver called. Said it's urgent. Miss Lynn. He sits in the front seat of his car like he has never seen it before. He calls the number with fingers that feel like they belong to someone who has been outside too long. The voice on the phone is precise and does not rush. Mr. Vale, thank you for returning my call. I'm Nadine Carver. I represented Mara Lynn. I have a packet I need to deliver to you per her instructions. You are in the city today? I'll come to you, he says, because suddenly the thought of going home makes the walls heavier than stone. He drives back through a world that is merciless in its normalcy, cyclists who believe themselves invincible. A man walking backward down the street because his daughter is running at him with her arms out. A dog's bright green ball bouncing across lanes. The streets are wet and full of winter light. He presses the bridge of his nose as if pressure could push back tears. He is 43 years old and can buy 7 houses with the loose change of his company's last quarter, and there is not a single dollar that has a song to comfort a child who has knelt in the mud to kiss a stone. When he reaches the spotless glass of Nadine Carver's office, he wipes his shoes on the mat, like manners might give him gravity. Nadine is small, her haircut blunt, her eyes the color of old smoke. She shakes his hand as if she were trained in a time when people took pleasure in courtesy. I'm sorry for your loss, she says, and he believes she means it. He sits. She does not make a pot of coffee because they don't have that kind of time. She takes a folder from her desk and lays it between them with the kind of care he recognizes. A woman who has 2 sons who leave their shoes in the hall and a grandmother who taught her to put things down like the table is a living thing. This is a copy of Miss Lynn's will, she says, her eyes on him, not on the paper. And this is a letter she asked me to ensure gets to you personally. She pauses. There are other letters as well, one for each of the girls to read on their birthdays for the next 5 years, and one for June to read when she turns 18. June, he says, tasting the name. The older, Nadine says. 12 next month, Eliza is 8. He nods. He could say he knows. He won't. I can tell you what's in the will, she says, but the letter is, she asked that I not summarize it, that you read it. If you choose to share it with anyone, that will be up to you. He reaches for the envelope and sees his name in Mara's handwriting, small and sure, like the curve of moonlight on a spoon in their first apartment's kitchen. He does not want to open it here under recessed lighting. He wants to open it in a place where if he cries there will at least be a plant to be kind to him. Nadine reads his face. You can take it, she says. Do you have any questions about the will? It's a raft of words, so he says the one that is stuck in his throat. Are they mine? Nadine studies his face for a heartbeat. She filed paperwork to secure the right to use viable embryos without spousal consent when you could not be reached. There was notice by publication. The court granted the petition. Consent from you was deemed not required due to extenuating circumstances. My negligence, he says without any need for smoother language. Nadine does not disagree. There were 3 viable embryos. 2 resulted in live births. June Lynn. Eliza Lynn. There is documentation that Miss Lynn informed her obstetrician that the genetic material was yours. There is also a letter addressed to you in which she discusses her thinking and the timeline. She taps the envelope. I believe you will find answers there that are not in the court documents. And the 3rd embryo, he asks, a voice in his throat he hardly recognizes, was not viable, Nadine says gently. He breathes through his nose. He looks at the envelope again, as if it might heat in his hands like an animal that can recognize its person. The will names guardianship in the event of her death, Nadine continues. Her sister, Renee, as first choice. Renee is in inpatient recovery at present. Willa Shore as second. Willa filed temporary papers last week to give the girls stability. She has the house and the small bakery to manage. She cannot take them permanently. There is a note that she wanted to, but she recognizes limits. Nadine's mouth flattens. There is also a letter from a Mr. Julian Pike with an intent to petition the court for guardianship. He contends he was in a relationship with Miss Lynn at the time of June's birth and acted in loco parentis. He doesn't have a biological claim. There's no affidavit of parentage. He was never married to Miss Lynn. The birth certificates list no father. Because she couldn't call me, he says, and hears in his own voice both a defense and an indictment. Because she didn't call you, Nadine says, cutting gently with the addition. The reasons for that are, she gestures to the envelope again. He nods. Of course there is a trust. Mara didn't die rich, Nadine says flatly. She made a life, she made choices for it to be small and local and full. She had an insurance policy, she had some savings. She had a house with a mortgage that was almost paid off. She had 2 daughters who will need college and health insurance, and the kind of ordinary cushion we wish for the people we love. Part of the will mentions that you will not likely be in need of money. She asks, not for money, but for presents. Presents. He wants to laugh because she is asking, from beyond the world of phone calls and parking tickets and little socks in a dryer, for a thing that he had withheld from her with a stubbornness that was half fear and half pride. Nadine is watching him. Are you prepared for a petition? I don't even know if they would want me, he says, because truth has already put its hand in his mouth like a bit and he is letting it. Children are not chattel, Nadine says, the lawyer in her stepping forward to stand with the woman. They have voice. Judges listen. They also need stability, routine, love, and boring things like chicken soup and someone to show up for the school play. You are in a position to provide some of those. The question is which ones you intend to offer. He looks at the window. Outside, the city wears a layer of water that makes its surfaces honest. He thinks of his apartment, all clean lines and the smell of a candle that someone once told him indicates sophistication. He has a spare bedroom that has never been used for anything, but guests he can count on one hand. He thinks of the girl's home in a neighborhood where he hasn't been in years, where the curbs are uneven and the trees are old enough to make tunnels over the street. I will read the letter, he says, and then I will decide on the petition. He breathes once. I am not prepared to let a stranger who writes letters at a time like this be the one who decides their lives. Mr. Pike is not a stranger to them, from what I understand, Nadine replies, unflinching. He was around. Around is not the same as safe, he says, nor is money the same as a father. He nods. A woman he divorced is still teaching him things she should not have had to teach him when she was alive. Okay, he says, his voice raw. Please email me the details, and if Willa will let me see them, I'd like to. He stops. He can't say it without sounding like every man who wants things without having paid for the right to see them. I'll speak with Willa, Nadine says. She's not unreasonable. She is protective, as she should be. As he stands, Nadine picks up another envelope. There is one more thing, she says, almost delicately. I have copies of journal entries Mara asked to be preserved for the girls. I won't invade your privacy by reading this letter you hold. But I will tell you that grief sometimes eats at one end of the table, while love is still setting plates at the other. If you sit down, it can feel like being dined on by both. That doesn't mean you leave the table. It means you understand a little more of how the meal goes. He nods because his mouth is full of something sharp, and he doesn't want to spit it. When he gets back to his car, he doesn't start it. He slips his finger under the envelope flap and opens the letter with a care that would have made his mother laugh at him once upon a softer time. The paper smells like paper. The ink is the same black he used to borrow from her when he could not find his own pens. The first line makes something he didn't know hid in his ribs sit up and put its hand on the table. Adrian, if you are reading this, it means I missed the chance to say it to your face. I did love you. I don't know if you need to hear that, but I need to say it. He stops. He puts the paper to his chest like an old movie character. He breathes. He goes on. It was a thunderstorm at first, remember? All static and heat and what if. I didn't love the way you could talk a cab driver into thinking the highway was $2 shorter than it was. I loved the way you watched a woman sing on a small stage like you wanted to be cut open so the sound could put a window in you. I'm writing because I did a thing people will decide is either brave or foolish, but which, to me, felt like a third thing. You know how you always wanted a third option when the first two weren't fair. When June was a wish with a lot of paperwork, and you were never home and I was always crying, and we had a handful of fragments with little labels on them, I decided that the future could still be a way back to love, even if it wasn't our love anymore. I know you signed a piece of paper saying no, and I know I didn't call you to ask first, I know you think you never miss calls. I also know you missed a lot. When I was pregnant with June, I bought myself a blue mug I couldn't afford and I waited for the days to pass, and I didn't say your name to my belly because I didn't know if that would be fair. I said my grandmother's and my sister's and my own. And one night, when she kicked and my whole life lit up and went dark and lit up again, I pressed my hand to my stomach and I said, "Your father is stubborn. That might be in your blood. Don't let it become a weapon. Let it be a wall against the stupid things the world will offer you with ribbons. You can be mad about this line. You can be mad about all of this. You were not there. That is true. You were someone else's son, someone else's boss, someone else's lover in a week in a hotel I know about because the world is smaller than you think. And I did not want you to be a person they met who left again. I make this sound neat. It wasn't. It was bloody and human, and sometimes I wanted to call you so badly I bit my hand. Maybe the courts will say I did something wrong. Maybe you will say it. I will not argue from wherever I am. I thought you would do what you do best, fill empty space with systems that keep panic at bay until you can breathe enough to feel. I thought you would build yourself a life that could hold this letter without it shattering you. His vision blurs. He moves the paper closer. June is a storm that thinks it's the sky. She will come in hot and look for a wind to fight with. She is a better question than anyone you ever hired will know how to answer. Teach her to stand still sometimes. And show her the ocean as many times as you can. She is searching for something honest enough to stand her weather. Eliza is a quiet river. She will look like she needs you less than you need her, which will be both true and false. She collects small, specific things like buttons and the way a person laughs when they are off guard. Let her collect. Give her a safe drawer. I got cancer once in the middle of all this. It was a small one. I didn't tell you. I don't know why I'm telling you now, except that sometimes a free bird wants to tell an old tree about its sky. The chemo made my hair fall out. June cried and then cut a piece of her own and taped it to my head. Eliza asked me if hair has ghosts. When I could swallow again, I decided if I wanted to be alive, it had to be big and small both, and that's how I learned to bake bread that was mostly holes. Willa helped. If you want in now, come without a trumpet, come without a parade, come with your shoes off. They do not need a man to make decisions like a knife. They need a kettle on. They need someone to stand in a school hallway and hold a puffy coat like it matters. They need someone to carry the grief with two hands so it doesn't spill all over the math homework. You will be very bad at this for a while. Do it anyway. It will be the first thing you have done that matters the way you think you matter. There is a photograph in a wooden box with a gray ribbon that Eliza knows how to open because she learned to pick locks from the woman who taught her to braid gimp. The picture is of you in the tie I wanted to cut off with kitchen scissors. That is the man I married. He is not a monster. He is also not a hero. He is a person who will be asked to figure out how to love things more than he loves the ways he's learned to not be afraid. I forgive you, if that's what this is. Not because I am good. Because I'm tired, and tired people understand that when a thing is heavy you can drop it, or you can set it down, and I choose to set down this heavy thing. Take care of them if you can. If you cannot, tell me that without pretending you can and then failing while their shoes, oh God, their shoes, sit by the door like questions that never stop asking. Mara, he folds himself over the steering wheel, and of everything he expected to feel, anger, guilt, outrage. The thing that swamps him is gratitude, and then it's undertow, grief that has its own mouth and tries to breathe. He doesn't start the car because his hands are not behaving. He sits with the letter open on his lap until the cold reaches his hips. He reads it again. He holds his name the way she wrote it, and he understands she meant it the way she said it. His name was just a name. His choices were everything. He drives to the corner where his building squats like a judgment. He is greeted by a man who calls him Mr. Vale with an angle of head that is respectful, and he hates the way respect can feel like distance when your heart is out on the sidewalk. He rides in the elevator with a woman holding a small dog that looks like a deck brush. The dog looks like it knows his secret. In his apartment, the floor is so clean it tries to reflect his face. He puts the letter on his dining room table and it looks lonely. He opens his refrigerator. It holds a jar of mustard, a lime, 2 beers, a bottle of water with the label half peeled. He closes it. He sits down in a chair that cost more than the rent on his and Mara's first apartment, and it makes his back feel like a piece of furniture has been taught to pretend to hold a man. The phone pings. Tessa, where are you? Dinner at Luca at 7? Then a thundercloud. Then you okay? He could type no. He could type, I met my children today. He could type, who are you when there is nothing in front of you but an empty plate. He types, I can't do dinner, something came up. She writes back quickly, as if she had been waiting with her phone in her hand. Of course, something always. Her sarcasm has a face he knows too well. Did you at least tell your mother you weren't coming to brunch? I got a call, the passive-aggressive one. Not yet, he writes. Get in front of it, she says, using the language of the world where they both always are. He does not call his mother. He goes to the bedroom and opens the bottom drawer of the dresser where he has kept things that prove to him he once had a heart that ran on different things than stock. He finds the wedding invitation, the photograph of a lake and a canoe, a napkin with a drawing of a turtle bread, a post-it note on which Mara had written, Stop buying Basil. We have Basil. He pulls out a picture of them at 25, his head on her shoulder, her hand on his chest, both of them so sure of the camera and oblivious to the future. He puts them all back. He takes the letter to bed like you take a book you hope will ask you to be forgiven for the person it turned you into. It's a long night. It doesn't last long enough. By morning, he is at Willa's bakery because the letter told him to come without a trumpet and because he has never been good at doing anything without bringing a parade. He stands outside and watches a woman he remembers from a million mornings behind glass cut fat horseshoes of pastry and lay a knife down like a doctor, lays a scalpel down when a baby arrives with all its parts. The bell over the door rings. The smell is a thick blanket, yeast and sugar and the kind of cold air that makes the warmth feel like a person. Willa looks up and her mouth tightens. The line of customers goes silent, then lifts its sound back up like a flock. Coffee, he says uselessly, while the men behind him in suits look at their watches. Willa pours it and slides it to him with a glance that says she is not going to put his sugar in for him. Do you have time, he asks, for a conversation in the back, without, he gestures toward the line with his chin, an audience? Everyone in here knows who you are, she says. You've been on the business pages since you were 27. You're very interesting to people who want to know how to get a boat. To the rest of us, you look like a man who didn't buy his mother a winter coat. It's an old wound. He doesn't defend himself. I got a letter, he says, from Nadine. Willa's face opens slightly, then closes. Of course you did. Now, please. She tells a young man in a flower-dusted t-shirt to take over the front and gestures with her chin toward the back. In the kitchen, the air is warmer, alive with the little sounds that make a day. A radio murmuring, the hiss of something being washed, the click of a figure 8 formed in dough. Willa points to a stool. He sits. I'm not here to make your life harder, he says. You came to a bakery, she says. That's already hard. You want me to bake your mess into a nice round thing you can carry out and hand to someone and say, look how generous I am. We're out of that kind of bread. His hands go up, a surrender. I deserve that. More, she says. Probably, he says. He leans forward and rubs his face with his palm and hears in his ears the weird ocean sound of his own blood. I need to see them, Willa. They don't need to see you. That's the difference. You must be very careful with the word need now. I read the letter, he says. She asked me to start with showing up. No trumpet. That's one step, she says. How many do you think it takes to get to the door where kids stop flinching when an adult they love doesn't come home? He puts his head down. The counter smells like wood, like a different kind of patience than the kind he has learned. He wants to say all the things a person says when they want to be allowed to be decent after too many years of being less than. My father was a ghost. I was scared. I had to build something first, and then I forgot about what it was for. None of those things change a coat left at school, a girl waiting under a basketball hoop with a plastic bag because the mom who would have been there is under a stone today. What will you do when a judge says yes? Willa asks. You'll take them to your tower, hire a tutor, put an air purifier in their room, make their friends take an elevator? I will go where they are, he says, and he means it with such bone he surprises himself. I will fix nothing. I will make breakfast and call it terrible because it will be. I will let Eliza keep buttons in my drawer. I will, his voice wobbles. He takes a breath. I will learn how to be a person without a parade, Willa. I promise you that. If I can't do that, I will leave before I don't. I won't let them practice on me if what they're practicing is how to lose again. She studies him. She looks over his shoulder at the little window where a kid in an apron is dusting kwasas with sugar and singing like it's not possible for the tune to go wrong. She looks back. They have grief like a waterfall, she says. It fills the house. It gets in the carpet. You'll slip. You'll want to yell at it to stop because everything is wet and you are not a water person. It will not stop. It will change stones. If you cannot stand next to it without putting a dam up made of your anger, then walk away now. I can stand, he says. Then come at 5, she says. I close early on Mondays to give my knees a prayer. They'll be home. You can sit on the couch and talk to them like you're a human man. He nods. He stands and realizes he is still holding the coffee cup like a person who doesn't have hands for other things. Thank you, he says. You can bring milk, she says. We always need milk. He leaves the bakery feeling like the city is a different place from the one he woke into. He buys milk like he has never bought milk before. He stares at labels and chooses the kind that feels like a promise his body can make without lying. He buys a bag of oranges because he remembers a winter when Mara ate an orange every night at their small kitchen table, and the room smelled like Florida beach houses he had never been to. He buys a box of crayons, even though there are likely crayons in a jar already. He buys them because he wants to have something to put in a drawer. At 5, he stands outside a small house with cracked slate steps and a tin star bolted near the door. He rings. The door opens and smells like garlic and laundry, and the confidence of shoes piled inside because the outside is for the bad things and the inside is for us. June is there. She is wearing a t-shirt with a band she probably doesn't listen to. Her hair is in 2 braids, not one, as if she is trying out new ways of giving herself a handle. Her eyes go to the groceries and then to his face and then to the ground. 17 minutes late, she says. I'm sorry, he says. Willa told me 5. Clock starts 5, she says. Mama used to say that. Means ready at 5 means at the door at 4:55 so you can breathe at 4:57 so you can stand at 5. Point taken. He nods. He doesn't defend himself by pointing out that he was here and walked around the block because his legs needed motion. He holds up the bag like a ritual offering. I brought milk, he says, and oranges. She looks at the oranges. She almost says thank you. She moves aside. Coats off, she says. Shoes off. Willa gets mad about salt on the rug. Eliza's voice floats from the couch. Is that him? Who? June says over her shoulder but not unfunny. Eliza, Willa calls from the kitchen. That's rude, baby. His name is Adrian. That sounds like a boy who moved to Montreal and came back with a jacket, Eliza says, and it is an astonishment that this line breaks the tension like bread. Adrian steps into a living room that has a couch he loves immediately because it looks like it's held 100 bad nights and 1,000 good naps. There is a coffee table with scribbles in the wood from kid projects and a plant in the corner that is doing better than it has any right to. On the floor is a scatter of playing cards and a book about birds that has lost its dust jacket. On the wall is a painting of a bicycle with balloons tied to it, a curl of their strings fluttering in a sky blue enough to make you think hope is an ordinary thing. Eliza is 8, small and serious, her hair a halo of static electricity. She sits cross-legged with a glue stick and a stack of felt. She looks at him with the careful consideration of a scientist. Do you like dogs? She asks to begin the trial. I do, he says and means it. He had a dog at 12 that used to sleep under his chair at breakfast and would only eat toast if it had butter. Do you like birds? She asks. I like the idea that their bones are hollow, he says. I don't always like them when they get close. Eliza nods, satisfied that he knows the important facts about skeletons. What about soup? I make soup, he says. This is a lie. He could make soup. He could look it up. He could stand at a stove and cry over a pot because the onion in the pan smells like his mother's hair when she wore it up to iron. June sits in an armchair and pulls her legs under her, making herself smaller. Willa appears with a dish towel over her shoulder. She saves him. You might not get to soup today, she says. You might get to question number 4, which is, do you remember what Mama smells like? He swallows. He had expected this, and he had not. Yes, he says. Lemons when she baked, Paint when she painted in her old apartment with the windows that stuck, the white part of oranges, sometimes rain. And once, he stops. He almost says the way the skin behind her ear smelled when I kissed it. He is a grown man with a mouth that can stop itself. Eliza nods. June's mouth twitches. She is trying not to let that picture in. He respects it. Show him the box, Willa says. He came this far. Let him see the museum. June stiffens. The museum is ours, she says. Okay, Willa says. Then you can give him the after-hours tour sometime when you have a flashlight and feel like scaring him. Eliza considers. Do you know how to make the shadow bunny? She asks him. He says he does and makes his two hands into a rabbit on the lamp. Eliza's mouth opens. You cheated, she says. Your thumb fell down, the bunny would have a weird nose. He fixes it. This is what he is here for. Fixing thumbs on shadow bunnies is a thing the world should have told him about earlier. Do you want to see where she is sleeping? Eliza asks him as casually as a person asks, do you want to see the backyard where we keep the tomatoes? He does. He does not. It's okay, Willa says. If you don't want to. She means the urn, June says, with teenage acid that makes him ache for her. The fireplace. There's no place to kneel here because that would be altar, and we don't like altars. We like pillows, Eliza says, and slides off the couch and takes his hand before he can do anything but take it back. Her hand is small and warm and sticky where the glue stick got her. He follows her to the mantel, where there is an urn that is not a fancy urn. It is a ceramic jar a potter in the neighborhood made, glazed in a muddy blue that catches the light and the fingerprints. Next to it is a photograph of Mara smiling with her mouth closed, like a person who used to smile with her mouth open but learned something. He puts his fingers lightly on the mantel. It is dusted and it is not. He closes his eyes for a brief moment. He doesn't say hi, he doesn't say sorry, the house is listening and it is too early for speeches. Okay, Eliza says, done. We can watch TV now. Willa said I have to wait to ask you what you do for work because that's not polite, which is dumb because Mr. Pike always wants to talk about work, and I think it's a man disease. The name lands like an unexpected storm. Who? He asks crisply before he can soften it. June's jaw tightens, Willa's eyes warn. Julian, Willa says, Mr. Pike, he used to come around. He's not a disease, she says as polite. He's a complication. He brought donuts once, Eliza says. They had sprinkles like confetti, and he left a cigarette on the porch. June made him go outside to smoke, and he said he couldn't because he left his shoes inside, which was a joke that wasn't funny. Adrian swallows. I see, he says. He doesn't. He sees the outline of a man who would like to have a reason to claim things that shine. He said he might come today, Eliza says. But he's almost always wrong about what his mouth says. He is sometimes right, June says, weirdly protective. He fixed the sink. He carried boxes when we moved the couch so Willa could vacuum under it and find all the popcorn. He said he might take us to the water park. He didn't. Who cares? Water parks are a million things. You get wet and then you get sick. Adrian's jaw wants to clench. He makes it relax. He looks at Willa. I don't want to fight in front of them. Good, she says, with real relief because she is very tired and her knees have been praying all morning. They eat soup. It is chicken noodle. It is the kind of soup that has saved people from the edge of the worst thing because it tastes like care. He feeds himself slowly. He listens more than he speaks. He asks them about school, and June rolls her eyes and says, public school is a sociological experiment, which makes him want to laugh and adopt her as a professor. He asks Eliza if she wants to show him her drawer, and she does, a shoebox under the couch filled with buttons and receipts, and a marble that isn't really marble but glass. My favorite is this, she says, and holds up a ribbon the color of dirty snow. It's ugly, June says, but not unkindly. It was around Mama's hair when she got better, Eliza says. You keep a thing that did a job well even after because that's polite. Later, when it's time to leave, he stands and feels the weight of the letter in his pocket as if it were not paper but something with gravity. He could say, I'll be back tomorrow. He could say, I'm filing a petition. He could say, I will never let anything bad near you, which is a promise no one can keep. He says, can I come by Thursday? I can bring. He looks around like the house might suggest. Milk. And a dog book. And I can, his brain scrambles. I can pick you up from school Friday and we can go to the place with the smelly fish. The market, Willa fills in, amused. Yeah, he says. That, if you want, no fish, we can look at the crabs and feel sorry for them. Or feel impressed, whatever your values. Eliza nods vigorously. June lifts one shoulder. She says, "You can put the milk in the fridge." He does. He hears Willa's voice behind him in a whisper that is almost too quiet for him to hear. "Be on time." He turns at the door. "I will." 4:55, June says, and he nods as if he is taking instructions from a military general. He goes home and sits on the floor because chairs feel silly. He takes off his shoes because the house does not deserve the road. He lets silence sit with him like a person. He texts Tessa and tells her he cannot be the kind of man who cancels and never explains. He tells her the truth with the care he should have used to tell other people their truths. He ends it. Her reply is 3 lines of ice. He doesn't respond. He sleeps badly and wakes like a man who kept a promise to himself and hopes he can keep one to a child. Word runs like rumor in a city that loves the shape of a story. Adrian Vale, the man with a company that moves the world's stuff from one place to another, was seen in a bakery buying milk. By Wednesday, a photograph shows up on a tabloid site, him bent over laughing beside an 8-year-old with a glue stick mustache. He feels murdered and loved at the same time, a sensation that is new. On Thursday, he is at the door at 4:52. June raises an eyebrow and marks a tally on a post-it on the fridge. He doesn't dare ask what the tally is for. They go to the market and don't buy fish. Eliza finds a snail in a crate and whispers to it like it is a ghost. June pretends to be bored and then asks him if he ever thought about buying a sailboat. "No," he says. "I have a complicated relationship with wind." "People with complicated relationships with wind still go outside," she says pointedly. He says nothing. He lets her have the last sentence. By Saturday, he has learned where the playground is with the swings that don't pinch. By Sunday, he has learned where Mara used to stand in the kitchen and watch the street like a movie. He stands there sometimes, not to take her place, but to borrow her vision for a second. He stands there and says her name in his head and waits for his chest to stop trying to make a hole where a person he loved used to be. The first court date arrives as January tries to break itself over the back of the city. The courthouse smells like old paper and warm coats. Judge Harriet Bloom sits high, her gray hair like a crown of clouds, her patience like a bridge. Willa sits next to June and Eliza. He sits behind them because he knows where to put himself. Across the aisle sits Julian Pike, in a suit that is trying too hard. He is handsome in a way that would have worked in some women's 20s. He looks at Adrian like the room is a bar and they are about to fight over a song. Julian's lawyer is slick. He says long sentences about stability and continuity, and the fact that children are not puppies you give to the man with the most expensive bowl. He talks about Mara's wishes as if he knew them and Adrian did not. He refers to time spent. He motions to a stack of photographs of him in the little backyard wearing a T-shirt that says Grill King. He smiles when he holds up a photograph of Eliza on his shoulders. Nadine is quiet and then ferocious. She calls Willa to the stand and Willa does the thing she does best, tells the truth like it's bread. Julian was around, she says. He was also absent for long stretches. He yelled at the girls once because Eliza left her shoes on the steps. Mara told him he could come back when he understood children have shoes to leave. He brought donuts. He didn't bring presents. He doesn't know the name of June's math teacher, and he thinks Eliza has a dog she doesn't have. He can be fun. He is not, in my opinion, safe in the long way of safety. He makes big plans and relies on other people with quieter hands. She glances at Julian, and her face is not kind and not cruel. It is the face of a woman who has been standing on the front step of life holding a towel for years. Nadine calls Adrian to the stand, and he looks at his hands and tells the whole world where he was a decade ago when the forms were signed. He talks about the affair like he is reading a weather report. He does not cry. He says the words sperm and ego in the same sentence, which makes a teenager in the back cough a laugh into his elbow. He says, "I am not a good man, but I am willing to become one. I failed a person I loved. I don't intend to fail the 2 people she left in my path." He hears a sound from June that is half cough and half a noise he does not yet understand. Eliza's foot taps the chair leg. Judge Bloom leans back and taps her pencil against the bench. She asks questions that make accounts of the past sound less like stories and more like maps. She is kind to the girls in a way that makes Adrian want to put a folder over his heart to protect it. She does not make a ruling that day. She orders a DNA test, not to prove what everyone already half knows, but to make the paperwork align with what the kids' faces tell the room. She orders a temporary agreement. The girls will remain in Willa's care through the next 2 months while court associates evaluate the homes, assess the people, make notes about drawer space and bedtime visions. This is both a relief and an ache. He wants to take them home. He does not have a home for them. He wants to buy furniture. He wants to make pancakes. He wants patience. After court, in the hallway lined with framed photographs of judges from earlier centuries, Julian intercepts him. "You think you can buy me," Julian says. "You think you can buy them." Adrian says, very carefully, "I think you are wearing cologne in a courthouse." Julian laughs without humor. "You're funny," he says. "You all think you're funny. You think money can fix a sink." Money buys sinks. Presence fixes sinks. I fixed that sink. I was there when Eliza threw up all over the one she liked, and she cried like she was going to die because she loves that sink like it's an animal. "I know what presence is," Adrian says, quietly. "I know its cost and its failure. I know the price of absence more. You know a lot of things about price, friend." "We're not friends," Adrian says. Julian shifts. His eyes flick to where June stands pretending to read a plaque. "You know she hates you," he says. "And she's the one with the mouth. Eliza's a puppy. She loves the nearest person who doesn't make the room feel like a step on a weird staircase." "Don't talk about her like that," Adrian says, and the man in him who is made of anger and fists stands up. "Don't talk about either of them like that." Julian's mouth crooks. "Let's see you show up," he says. "Let's see you show up when she throws your favorite mug against a wall and it becomes 100 smaller mugs that all cut your feet. Let's see you show up when Eliza decides she doesn't like the way your girlfriend's sweaters smell. Let's see you show up when Willa's heat goes out and the oven won't light and the kitchen is cold as a church." "I'll be there," Adrian says, and hears his voice like a creak in a house that hasn't been used in a while and now must hold weight. He keeps showing up. He learns the route from his apartment to their school without using his GPS. He learns how to say the names of their friends without sounding like a substitute teacher. He learns June's tells, the way she makes a tiny noise when she's lying, like she needs permission to tell the truth. He learns Eliza's sadness. It comes like fog and recedes like tide. He learns Willa's limits. She sits on the stoop at 10 p.m. sometimes and looks at the street like it owes her something, and he sits a step below, and they don't talk, and that is presence. The DNA comes back, and it is the least surprising thing that has ever existed. The judge stamps a paper that says, in a legal font, that blood tells a story too. He starts a fund. He does it privately because he is learning. It is not for college. That feels like a thing you slap your name on and feel the warm halo of your guilt become philanthropy. It is for now. It is for the teacher who needs tissues, and for the field trip that needs shoes, and for the one extra slice of pizza for the kid who has to go home to a dark apartment. He asks Nadine to make it quiet. She gives him a look that says, finally. The story in the papers goes like this: wealthy man wants kid he didn't know he had. The comments are less kind. The neighborhood deals with it by doing what neighborhoods do, rallying around grocery lists and the kind of gossip that is like a quilt, a lot of pieces, some ugly, some bright, that somehow keep you warm. The second court date is harder. Julian's lawyer has found a way to make the part of Mara that was infuriating into something that sounds like negligence. He talks about the accident like it could have been prevented. He says the word seatbelt like a punitive prayer. Willa and Adrian both stare at him as if the language of grief can be so easily measured. Judge Bloom is not amused. She stops the lawyer with a raised palm. "We are done making absences of the dead," she says. "We are here to make presents out of the living." When it's Adrian's turn to speak again, he says less. He says, "I cannot give you a list of things I've purchased. I can give you a list of sentences I've learned to say. I am sorry, I was wrong, I am here." He looks at June. She looks away, which is progress. After court, it's snowing. Eliza sticks out her tongue to catch flakes like she's catching excuses. June looks at him without armor for the first time. "Do you even like hot chocolate?" she asks. "Or is that beneath you?" "I like it a lot," he says. But I don't like the kind with water. It's a moral position. She almost smiles. Okay, she says, you can come over. Willa won't be there. She has a thing. You can make it, and not cut your mouth on the packet. They go. He burns the milk a little, and they drink it anyway. He doesn't mind that the cocoa leaves squares on the cups. He watches the girls do homework. He watches June pretend not to need help. He watches Eliza draw an animal that looks like a rabbit but with wings. He asks if he can take a photo of their mugs on the table. June says yes and then says, don't post it anywhere. I know things about the internet. I won't, he says. He means it. That night, when he is walking out to the street, June follows him to the stoop. She stands next to him, not touching, her breath making little ghosts in the yellow streetlight. You think you know everything, she says quietly. I don't, he says. You think you can fix this? I can't, he says. I can only make dinner and go to court and show up. You didn't show up, she says, and it's not a fighter's punch. It's a statement like it's a weather report. I know, he says, and it puts his knees into the ground. I know, she nods once. She looks at the street. I found the key to the box Mariah Carey style, she says, because she is 12 and a culture is her heir. With the magnet, Eliza would have found it with her teeth if we had let her try. Is there anything in it I should see? He asks. Yes, she says, surprising him. Commands, she wrote us commands. They're about not eating too much of the cheddar while we're cooking and saying we love you if that's true when we feel it and making sure Eliza doesn't feed cheese to squirrels. There's one for you. What does it say? He asks. You need to read it, she says. It's a fortune cookie rule. He laughs a little, and then the laugh breaks itself because he is standing on a stoop that used to be someone else's, and her ghost is sitting on the banister with her bare feet, and he wants to put a coat on air. He reads it later. It says, he will forget how to be kind to himself. Remind him by telling him a story in which he is not the villain or the hero but the neighbor who brings sugar. Weeks pass in this strange new shape. He sends an email to his board of directors and tells them he is taking a leave of absence. They are very generous. One of them tells him to take as much time as he needs. Another asks if he's dying. Another tells him he is making the right decision, and he has never thought that sentence would apply to him. He turns off some alarms in his brain and turns on others. He moves out of his apartment and into a smaller place 3 blocks from the girl's house, because he doesn't want to live in their rooms like a colonizer, and he wants to be able to walk the late-night walk to their stoop when Willa texts, "Come quick with a predator's economy." He fills his place with socks and cereal bowls, and the art pieces you only acquire when you go to PTA meetings where kids sell macaroni frames. He buys a rug that is too colorful because that is what his life needs. There are fights. Of course there are fights. One is about a field trip permission slip he forgot to sign because he was listening to a podcast about how to get an 8-year-old to sleep, and his brain ran off. June throws the pen at the wall. He says, I was wrong, and his old self howls because it wants to say, I was busy. Another fight is about the fact that he does not know where the light switches are in their house in the dark. Eliza is terrified of the dark. He buys a nightlight that throws stars on the ceiling and learns to walk around furniture like a person who doesn't hurt shins by clumsiness. Spring sneaks in. Daffodils shiver like little yellow warnings. Willa's knees allow her to go on a walk with a man who builds boats in a warehouse and thinks bread is a miracle. Adrian watches her leave in a dress and feels like the world is trying very hard to show him it still knows how to graciously be. And then someone leaves a notice on the bakery door because the city does what cities do when a person is not looking. It is a lease renewal that doubles the rent. Willa sits in the back among flour bags and does not cry. Everything is fine, she says, and it is both true and the opposite. He could write a check. This is the thing he is built to do. He wants to. He does not want to make a woman who has stood on her own feet for years now stand on his money. He makes phone calls. He goes to the landlord's office. He uses his voice in a way that is not a trumpet but a bell. He gets the number to move. He does not tell Willa how. She thanks him like he moved a heavy box with her and didn't leave a note about it on the internet. Julian shows up one day outside the school with flowers. He hands them to Eliza like she is an apology. June takes them and throws them away after he leaves. He sees Adrian watching from across the street. He gives him a look that says, I was here. Where were you? He mouths a word Adrian reads as, wait. He does not have to wait long for the bomb. He finds out from the internet again. A site that loves the pain of the rich posts a story. Ex-wife of shipping CEO had secret child with philanthropist. The article is incorrect in almost every way, but the headline has enough of the words that are his. The comments bruise. He finds out who fed the site the story by the way the story frames the timeline, someone who knows too much to be an outsider and too little to be careful. Julian. Adrian sits at his small table and hates the man and then remembers Judge Bloom saying, "We are done making absences of the dead," and decides to go see him. Julian lives in a building that is trying to be better than it is. The carpet smells like cigarettes and hope. He opens the door holding a beer and looking like he hasn't slept in a day and doesn't intend to anytime soon. Why? Adrian asks, because sometimes the simplest questions are grenades. Because you got everything, Julian says. Because I got the crumbs of a good thing and then the dog came and you kicked me out of the yard. I didn't kick you out, Adrian says. I asked for what I was always supposed to have. Possession is 9/10, Julian says, like a man whose life depends on cliches. The 10th is the part that matters, Adrian says. It's the part where you say you're sorry. Julian laughs and drinks. You're cute when you do righteous. Does the mirror tell you you're noble now? No, Adrian says. The mirror tells me I look like a man who needs sleep and whose daughter hates him and whose ex-wife is dead. Julian flinches. It's small, but it's there. For the first time, he looks like a person, not a sentence. I loved her, he says. Before you say it, I did. I loved the bread and the kids, and the way she said my name like I wasn't going to disappear if she said it loud enough. And I couldn't hold it. And you couldn't either. And now we are both standing in a room missing a person who is not going to knock. Silence sits between them like furniture. I have enough money to make your life easier, Adrian says flatly. I could pay off your debts and make you disappear or make you nicer. I don't get nicer when I get full, Julian says. I get meaner. I won't give you money then, Adrian says. I will give you a thing instead that you can't spend, a boundary. You will not speak to the press about the girls again. You will not follow them to school or wait outside the bakery. You will ask Willa if you want to see them, and if she says no, you will go home and eat whatever is in your fridge and watch whatever game is on, and remember what it feels like to keep your mouth shut. If you do not, I will not stop until your phone does not ring anymore, and I know you think that sounds negative. It is a promise. Julian looks at him. He laughs again, but his eyes look older. We'll see, he says, which is a man's way of saying, I might be brave and I might be an idiot. When he gets back home, June is on the stoop. She is holding the magazine like a dead thing. So, she says. So, he says. Everything is gross, she says. This is true, he says. You knew, she says, accusation feathered into the words, softer because she does not want to be entirely unfair. I knew he would do something, he says. I did not know it would be this. She sits. He's stupid. He is a man who doesn't know what to do with his sadness, he says. What about you? She asks, and there it is, the question that keeps him up. I am trying to learn, he says. I am trying to do the right thing before I do the easy thing. She looks at the street. She laughs suddenly, with bitterness he remembers tasting at 15. It must be so hard to be rich. It is, he says, and she snorts, and he lets it sit, and then he says, it is hard to be rich and also be good. It is hard to be poor and also be kind. It is hard to be 12. It is hard to be 8. It is hard to be a bakery owner with rent. It is hard to be dead, if you ask me. She bites the inside of her cheek to hide the smile. He's getting better at this. A week later, there is a fire. It is not like a movie. It is small and mean, and it eats a wire behind the oven in Willa's bakery because an electrician called in sick to a job 10 years ago, and a man with too much to do and not enough hands made a choice. The oven trips. Willa is at the counter. Smoke crawls out like a cat. Someone screams because someone always does. The sprinkler doesn't work because a tenant upstairs put a potato on it once to dry for a school science class. This is a city of stupid and brilliant. In 4 minutes, the bakery is a gray box. The fire station is 4 blocks away. They are there fast. The smoke is black. Willa is coughing. June is outside, barefoot because she ran across the street without shoes. Eliza is crying like her chest is being wrung. Adrian arrives because his phone lights up and he runs like his chest is a drum. He gets there in time to see a window blow out and the street fill with soap and water. He puts his hands on June's shoulders. Are you okay? He says, and his voice is a breath. She nods. Will is coughing, she says, and it is an answer that is not the answer to the question and also is. He looks around. Julian stands on the sidewalk with a face like a man who has lost a bet he should have known he would lose. He sees Adrian and nods once. He has the decency to keep his mouth shut. The firefighters do their beautiful work. The bakery is saved. Water drips from everything. Flour turns to paste. The air smells like a weird cake. Willa sits on the curb with a blanket around her shoulders and looks at the building like it just told her it would stop loving her into an old age and would instead be her friend. She laughs and coughs and says, I guess we're closed early today. The girls go to Adrian's apartment because the house smells like smoke too. He makes soup that is better than the first time because he knows how long onions take. He tells them a story about a dog he had at 12 that was afraid of balloons. Eliza falls asleep against his shoulder. June sits across and looks at his face with a thing in her eyes he recognizes because he has seen people choose who they will extend their life to like a rope. Can I say something that is going to sound like a movie? She asks. Yes. If you hurt us, she says, simple as an address, I will kill your boat. He doesn't correct her nautical inaccuracies. Okay, he says, I don't have a boat, but I'll let you kill whatever you want if I hurt you. She nods, she believes him. This is both a grace and a terror. Spring is a long exhale. The court makes the thing official. The language is precise and boring and beautiful in its boringness because it is a scaffold on which a family can hang a coat. The judge says words like guardianship and best interest, and the words that matter are joint. Willa keeps them in her topology. Adrian is their legal father. The order moves through the room like a careful hand smoothing a blanket. Outside, Eliza jumps on the sidewalk and says, Does this mean we can have 2 Christmases? She looks worried. Or do we have to choose because that's not fair because I am very bad at choosing? You can have 3, Willa says. We'll celebrate all the things. June rolls her eyes, but she is smiling and she takes a photograph of the 3 of them with her phone and texts it to herself with the caption, Idiots in suits. Summer arrives with a hunger. They learn the good pool. It's the one with the kids from their school and the lifeguards who are more concerned with actual safety than appearances. Adrian learns to do the thing with the towel that makes a little tent for changing. He learns the names of 100 desserts you can make with strawberries. He learns his mother's number by heart again and calls and says, If you want to see me, you can't say the thing about failed marriages and money laundering. She says, There was never money laundering. He says, I know. She says, Come for dinner and bring one of them if they want to come, and if they don't, bring a picture of their socks. He goes. He brings socks. They go to the cemetery on Mara's birthday. Eliza carries daisies like a sword and a shield. June carries nothing because she doesn't carry objects into that space. It is a day like a sky with an apology in it. They stand. He doesn't do speeches. He does presents. He puts his hand on the stone and thinks it's funny that we put our hands on rock as if rock isn't older than our language. He listens. Eliza whispers to the stone as if it were an ear. June stands still like a girl who is learning to weather. On the way home, Eliza says, I had a dream last night that she was a bird. Of course you did, June says, and it is loving but also like she will always be exasperated with what is beautiful. What kind? Adrian asks. A small one, Eliza says. Not a hawk, and not a robin because robins always look like you interrupted them. She was a bird that likes to look at things upside down. A nuthatch, he says. What? She says. A little bird that goes down the trunk head first, he says, and then they all laugh because there's a word for that. There's a word for everything if you want there to be. They get home, and there is a package on the stoop because time doesn't know how to be polite. Inside is a box of letters from Nadine, the yearly ones that Mara wrote to the girls to be opened on birthdays. He thinks of the way grief sets a table without asking, and he takes the box to the table, and he lets June open it because she is in charge of the museum. The letters are tied with ribbon. Of course they are. Do we read them now? Eliza asks, bouncing. 1, June says. The rest we put away where mice can't get them, and we read them when the date says. Rules exist to make us feel like the world might keep some of its promises. They open one for Eliza because it is almost her birthday. Mara's handwriting is there, the curves that used to write grocery lists, butter, eggs, patience. The letter says, in part, when you are 8, you think you are a small person. You are big already. Being big means being able to stand under trees and hold out your arms for people who are little that day. It also means letting people stand under you when it rains. You are very good at holding out your arms, baby. Let other people be good at it too. Eliza cries and laughs and runs out to put her arms around Willa in the kitchen, and the woman who is kneading dough cries like a church because the floor is wet and she can't pretend to be busy. In August, they stand in Adrian's small kitchen making pancakes from a recipe he wrote on a post-it that he sticks to the cabinet like a prayer. Eliza reads the directions. June cracks eggs with the confidence of someone who has cracked a lot of things and seen what's inside. Willa sits on the stool and tells a story about a man who came into her bakery and asked for bread without holes, and she gave him a store-bought loaf and charged him double. The radio plays a song that was in the car when he and Mara were late for a movie, and she told him to stop at the river instead. And they did, and he understood that sometimes there are third options. He flips a pancake, and it lands half on the edge of the pan and half not, and he thinks of all the times he has landed like that in his life, and how sometimes the half that didn't land is the sticky part that holds the good thing to the plate. That night, Eliza asks him to tell a story for bedtime. He sits on the edge of the bed and tells her a story about a girl who grew up in a newsroom made of wind and learned to speak to birds in a language that sounded like coins in a jar. He does not tell her about the time he slept in his office because the office didn't ask him to be present in inconvenient ways. He will tell her that when she's 21 and pretending she invented regret. He tucks her in and sits on the floor in the hallway, exhaustion making his back into a question mark. June comes out of her room and sits next to him. She leans her head against the wall. "Happy birthday," he says, because tomorrow she will be 13 and also 8 and also 30 and also a baby with a hospital bracelet he didn't hold. He says, "I love you," and he is careful because he doesn't want to pour words into a space that hasn't asked for them. She breathes out. She says, "Okay," and that is the first yes. He does not sleep that night because he is a man who has a house that has breathing in it, and his old brain doesn't know how to be in rooms with breathing. He gets up at 3 and pads to the kitchen and makes tea because soup is not a thing you can do at this hour. He hears the floor creak and thinks of 100 nights when a young man in an older house used to go to the fridge to eat cereal from the box because his father was not in a bed anywhere in the world and his mother pretended her heart was a carpet. He drinks the tea and his hand shakes and he thinks, "Don't live like this, Adrian." Fall arrives. Leaves put on their show. The first day of 7th grade for June is a theater. The first day of 3rd grade for Eliza is a parade. He goes to the school open house and sits in a small chair and listens to a teacher explain the new math like a person who has seen war. He introduces himself to June's math teacher and says, "I would like to know if she needs help." And the teacher says, "I would like to know who she counts to 5 with when she's angry." He says, "Me." The teacher nods. That is what the school needs. At the back to school ice cream social, someone's mother says to him, "You're doing so good." And he smiles, but he wants to say, "I am doing adequately in a system built to drown me in praise for washing my own spoon." He doesn't say it. He eats the ice cream and holds Eliza's hair while she almost vomits because she ate it too fast. And that is the fatherhood he is building, a hand and a napkin and a sentence that says, "Breathe through your nose." The third act arrives not with a bang, but with a knock. It's Julian at 8 p.m. on a Thursday, his face a map of a man who has been punched by someone who likes punching. He holds his hands up, not as a threat, but because he has been trained by police somewhere that this is what men do to show they are harmless. "I need money," he says, and his voice is a single string. "No," Adrian says. "Not for me," Julian says. "For no, that's a lie." "For me, for a dude who will make me into more of a man if I give him some of his money back." "You need to leave," Adrian says. Julian nods. He starts down the steps. He stops. "She wrote me a letter," he says to the air. "You know that. She wrote me one too. It said you were good until you thought you had to be better than what you were. Good is enough, Julian. You were enough for a bread place and 2 kids who don't rhyme. Stop trying to rhyme." He shakes his head. "She could make sentences out of my blood. It wasn't fair." Adrian says nothing. "He can't. I won't call the press." Julian says, and he sounds tired enough to be believed. I won't come around without a reason, but if I call you because a man has his hand on my jaw in a bar, can you send me someone who will pull his hand away? Because you know the kind of men who pull hands away. Adrian looks at the stair at Willa's porch at his own hands. He could say no. He could fashion a moral. He says, I know one man who can come. He doesn't like bars, but he loves pulling hands away. I'll call him. He calls Tomo Igarashi, his CFO friend with arms like bridges and a heart that collects stray animals. Tomo goes with Julian to a bar, and the problem is solved with talk, because sometimes that happens when the right guy talks. This is, in the end, a story about a man who learned to be right later than he wanted to and earlier than his kids could handle, and exactly when his ex-wife had planned for him to show up if he ever did. It is also a story about two girls. They do not become better because he arrives. They become older because time cannot be paid to slow. They become people in the world that has a million ways to make them into smaller things. He and Willa and Julian and the teachers and the neighbors and Nadine fight the shrink. There is one last time a market scene. It's winter again. The piles of oranges are a mosaic. The air smells like fish and metal and the study of impatience. They are walking, coats zipped up to their necks, when a woman bumps into Eliza and almost knocks her down. Adrian reaches out and catches her, and the woman says without looking up, Sorry, and Eliza says, It's okay. And he feels in his chest a soft thing lie down and go to sleep because the ductwork of the world is working. There was harm and apology and forgiveness, and a child did not get elbowed into a sadness too big for her small ribs. They walk into the cold and the light is like a song. They go to the cemetery. They bring daisies because Willa says, Let's do this thing the way she liked. They stand. The stone is a stone. They do not speak in a voice that thinks the grass is listening. He says in his head, Mara, if you can see me, I want you to see this. I want you to see your girls with their boots and their mouths and their rules and their tenderness. I want you to see I learned how to hold a cup of hot chocolate without burning if someone puts it in my hand at a time I want to put my hands in my pockets and run. I want you to see I built a drawer in my house that is full of buttons, not because I needed buttons, but because she did. Eliza laughs in the cold. June smirks at something he said that wasn't even that funny, but she is choosing to let him be good because her day is long. Willa stands with her hands in her coat and looks at the city like she could bake it a better crust if given a chance. Promise we'll come back next Sunday, Eliza whispers to the stone. Promise, June says. They walk away. They do not look back like the storybooks tell you not to, because this is not a myth, it is a life. The wind is rude to their faces. The sun is a cold coin above their heads. The girls hold his hands because they are cold and because it is allowed, and he holds theirs because he is a person who does that now. And when they get to the car, Eliza turns and says to him, very casually like a bird might say, Dad, do we have snacks? And the word makes his throat open, and the winter lets a little spring in for a second. He nods and says, Yes, and it is the truth, and it is the conversation he has waited for without knowing he was. They drive. The city moves. In the rearview mirror, the stone is small, and the road is an argument he no longer needs to win. He is a man who is late to everything and has finally decided to be on time to the one thing that matters. When the light at the intersection turns green, he eases forward. He will always see Mara in the way the light lays itself across a kitchen floor. He will always see himself in the way a girl sets a boundary and then lets it breathe. This is not happiness. It is something the older, better word for it carries, blessedness, perhaps, in the rag and bone and bread of the world. At home, Eliza opens her drawer and slides in a ribbon. June puts a post-it on the fridge and writes in small letters, 4:55. He laughs. He is ready. He will be waiting by the door.